Hello, I'm Shawn Williams. I am an actor, a teaching artist, a writer, director, a father of now an 11-year-old daughter. I had a few different roles at LibertyLEADS, but it all started off as a mentorship. The program was for young men. It was called Saywhatchuwannasay, and it was a program that taught young men to share their voice. One, that they have a voice, and two, that their voice needs to be heard. And it was really fun. It was kind of the vehicle that was used, because I am an actor, was filmmaking, because it was a way to kind of get their interest, knowing that we're making a film out of it. But there was a lot more to it. Like we taught them the game of chess. We did exploration in terms of self-identity and how you're portrayed in the world, versus well, your own perception versus how people perceive you in the world. So it was great. And I don't know if I shared this with you, but maybe 2 years ago now, I was on the train platform, and this man walks up to me, full beard, and he was with his wife, and he said, "Shawn," and I turned around and I didn't know who he was. I didn't recognize him at first, and he gives me a huge hug and proceeds to tell my daughter and her mother how much of an influence I had on his life. Of course, by this time I knew who it was, but it was so cool to see this kid that I'd met when he was in the 7th grade, now a grown man with a family, telling me that I'm part of the reason for him being who he is today. And that was crazy to see.
That's amazing. And what do you think you did that influenced that?
I would say one of the things that I tried to do was bring authenticity, like show them that I'm always going to be myself. And so to help encourage them to be themselves, no matter what the crowd is. Of course, doing that in a respectful way and appropriate way, but at the same time, not being afraid to just truly be themselves. For this young man that I was speaking of a second ago, he had a thing where we would call it, we dubbed it the microphone, because he would literally cover his mouth before he spoke. And it was, a sign of insecurity and not being confident in what he was saying. So he would do this, thinking that, that would do something as far as, but he later, slowly we were able to get him to pull the microphone down and just share his voice with us and be more confident in it. And like I said, when I met him on the train platform, there was no microphone. There was like, his chest was out. Like, it was really cool to see that arc.
That he went from like hiding to here I am and thank you.
Here I am.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. And like giving me this huge hug. It was
That's
really cool.
amazing.
But yeah, I would say authenticity and just encouragement.
So when you say like be who you are, have a voice, be authentic, like what does that mean to you?
For me, that means really like, the whole like I don't care mentality. And I don't know that not everyone has that, but like I literally, I'm sure I care a lot about what people think, but a lot less I think I can honestly say I care a lot less than most folks in terms of what others think about me. And I can't tell you exactly where that comes from. I know my grandfather plays a large role in that.
Tell me more about your grandfather before you move on.
Yes. So my grandfather, one of his slogans or mottos has always been no self. And as a youngster, I had no idea what the hell he was talking about, because all he would say was no self. He would say no self and no time. And as I got older, I realized exactly what he was saying. And by older, I mean, by the time I was 16, I understood what that meant. And it was like, know who you are before you try to, go out and do something in the world. Like, know exactly who you are. And when he said no time, that meant know that things change over time and things evolve. And like, but in those, short phrases, he was saying a whole lot. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so no self has always stuck with me. And that's something I always try to instill not only in my daughter, but everyone that I connect with. Um, just try to make people comfortable around me so that they can then, be comfortable enough to share more of themselves.
Right.
I don't know if I answered your question, but
You did. I mean, also, I happen to know you were raised by a single mom.
mhm.
So how did she influence that, or did she?
Of course she did. She influenced.
Talking about
If she didn't, I wouldn't be on camera speaking about it. Um, no, she influenced that a lot, and that was, allowing me the space to learn and grow on my own, but also giving me always dropping gems and guiding me on how to be a better person, not just a better man. I remember, I'll share a quick story. I remember being on the phone with, I don't know if it was a girlfriend, but I was on the phone with a girl, and I said, I love you before we were about to get off the phone. But I'm on the phone, this is back when there was you could just click and go to the next call. And so I'm on the phone, I say, I love you. And then I click over, but my mother is in another room somewhere. And then I'm talking. So I'm talking to someone else. And then I say, I love you again. So this is a different girl. My mother had no way, or so I thought
Okay,
my mother
sorry,
had.
go on.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so it's a different girl. Okay.
Don't judge me, Kimmy. You asked this
No
question.
judgment ever.
So anyway, I hang up the phone, and my mother called me into the kitchen where she was, and she said, "Sit down. I want to talk to you." So I sit down, and I don't know what she wants to talk about. And
And
she
how
said,
old are you now?
"Probably 14."
Okay.
And she said, "Don't do that." And I said, "Don't do what?" Now, mind you, I just got off the phone. She wasn't on the conversation in the conversation. She said, "I'm pretty sure you were talking to two different girls when you just said I love you." And she said, "Don't say those words unless you mean them, because that can really affect someone. And you don't know what's happening on the other end when you say that. So only say it if you truly mean it." And from then on, I made sure that I would never say it unless I meant it. Not just in a romantic relationship, but in a friendship, where like I don't, I'm even if it's the smallest thing, I make sure that I mean it before I say it. The reason as to why that's what I mean by the smallest thing. Even if it's the smallest reason as to why I'm saying I love you to this person, I make sure I mean it before I say it, because I feel like words, do carry a lot of weight. So,
Right. And
but that's one
that's
of
like more in alignment. It's like instead of using words as a manipulative kind of tool to gain, I guess, closeness.
right.
And there it goes back to knowing self, back to self, back to what do I mean? What's authentic? And then
Yep.
I know when I say these words, I can't control what other people do, but I know I mean it.
Yep. And I
But
know what
meanwhile,
I
now I
expect
feel
from
like
it.
really flattered because we've said we've loved each other. So
And I
that's
do love
amazing.
you. I do love you.
I love you too. Um, okay, so when you're helping these kids be authentic, can you see the difference? Like, I'm just curious what you noticed and saw.
Yeah, I would say most of it was feeling like their opinions didn't matter to a lot of people, in terms of issues that I saw, and therefore they would keep to themselves whenever you would ask a question, especially if it was something that could be deemed as personal. It was like, oh, I don't know, but it was always I don't know and not wanting to answer, because they felt, one, they would probably be judged, or another reason that I've heard was because they felt it didn't matter. Like it literally didn't matter. And so for me, that's obviously a problem if you feel like whatever you feel or think about doesn't matter to a lot of people. And the sad part is, a lot of times they were right in terms of, thinking about teachers or strangers that just see them as one thing, and not not ever take the chance to really get to know them. So that was one of the issues that I saw, and I think over time I would see them being more willing to just express themselves in different ways. Like I said, this program used filmmaking, so they had roles of writing the film. They were directors. They had to share personal things with each other. They had to help one another in terms, directing and figuring out different ideas. And I think all of that was proof that they were getting more comfortable, not just with themselves, but being around others and other young men, and being able to not just play the tough guy all the time. One of the things that I know that I would always say was, you make sure that you don't have to. Everything doesn't have to be confrontational, but at the same time, you can't control what others perceive. Like, so if you feel you've been wronged in any way, or someone is speaking down to you, it's okay to speak up on that, and to to share your voice and to share your thoughts on what just happened, without it being an attack or being disrespectful or anything like that. And also knowing that the more, because of their race, being Black and brown young men, because of their race, if they allow it, and this is me speaking from my opinion, if they allow it to happen, for people to speak down on them or to dismiss what they're saying, then it'll continue to happen, and then it'll become a norm for them. So that then when they become men in the world, they'll think, oh, no, I don't need to say anything right now, or I can't speak up, or, even with eye contact, I don't need to make eye contact, not knowing that not making eye contact is a way for people to say, oh, I don't need to respect you then, not being able to connect those dots necessarily for them.
Yeah. You've worked on curriculum for other places, and you've helped with the curriculum with Build Up Boys. And I was so happy to have you lead, and I chimed in. So I won't say I was a co-teacher, but
you were a co-teacher.
Yeah. Okay. A pilot, for Build Up Boys, first grade boys, who are all white, and I would love to hear your, not comparison, because obviously you can't compare first grade boys to seventh grade boys. But I'm curious, like, your experience of that, and also like what you noticed about their openness, or what you felt worked or didn't work about the curriculum.
I could see a lot of the barriers that the young boys had was probably due to believing that they shouldn't share their feelings, or that they weren't allowed to, because they were boys. And this goes across race, age, everything. I feel like that's been the norm for way too long, in terms of teaching young men that you shouldn't be sensitive, you shouldn't cry, you shouldn't, hugs and all of those things. That's for girls to do. Like, you need to be a man and be strong, whatever that means. So it was interesting to see that again, in not only grown, because I still see it in grown men as well, but to see it in, at such a young age, where this is something that's being taught, even if it's never actually said. Because for the boys in Build Up Boys, I don't know that any of them said that they were ever told these things, but they all had the same feeling for the most part. Not all of them, because that was cool to see too, that there were a few of them, you can tell that, and you can hear it, that they've been raised to share their feelings, and to be, it's okay to be emotional and things like that. So that was really cool to see as well.
Yeah. And how do you feel they responded to you?
I think I would like to believe they had a great time, and that was because I think it was partially because I made sure that I would listen. There was an agenda, obviously, with the curriculum, like you have set things, but I wanted to make sure that I was always listening to wherever they felt the conversation needed to go, or what the next activity should be, based off of what they needed in the moment. And so I felt like they were aware of that, like that they can speak as long as they wanted to. You know, there were times where I had to go, okay, we're gonna move on, but it was so cool to see their excitement and wanting to share, especially for those that started off like, you know, giving one word answers. And then once they realize, oh, this guy seems pretty cool, he'll allow us to just go on and on if we need to get it out. So yeah, so that was cool to see. If if you feel like you have an input, then you're more likely to participate a little more, as opposed to just someone talking at you or telling you what needs to happen. If you have, if you know, if you ask questions like, "What do you think?" and "What do you feel?" that makes me feel like, okay, I'm part of this as well.
Yeah. The exercise I thought, and tell me if you agree or if there's another one that pops to mind that worked so well, was the cross the line, because they seemed to really like knowing what other people liked and didn't like. And it kind of goes to Dr. Niobe Way's concept, and she has a book coming out on interpersonal curiosity, and how curiosity in schools academically is really valued and encouraged. And with girls and women, interpersonal curiosity is kind of there. Like, how do you feel? What's going on? With, you know, like that kind of real sense of let's dig in. And with boys, it's not as much the same, that kind of sense of interpersonal curiosity. And I felt like that was the strongest thing for me to see, is like, then they started to remember, oh, like Shawn doesn't like, what was the thing you didn't like?
Ice cream is what
Ice
they.
cream. And everyone was like, Shawn doesn't like ice cream. And then they remembered that. And then it's like, oh, I mean, you weren't their friend, but there's this feeling of like, oh, this person likes this and this person likes this. And I've seen that act out with Milo, who was in the group. Like he'll say, oh, my friend Jojo really likes cats. He would really like this show right now. And I'm thinking like, that's the foundation of friendship, when people like know each other, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, like your experience with that, and if you feel like that's what was going on for them, or if there's something else that's cool about it.
Going back to the safe space as well, it's okay to share exactly what I feel, even if everyone else doesn't feel this way or agree with it. There's no judgment. There's no laughter. You know, we would laugh, but whenever we would laugh, you can tell we were laughing
Together, for
not
sure.
at
Yeah.
anyone. So just being comfortable uh, with knowing that others are either on your side or even disagree with you, I think is a great thing. You know, you have to start something like that early on. So again, once they're uh, at a very a much older age as myself, they realize, no, it's okay to stand alone, or it's okay to be with a group of people and knowing exactly what I stand for or don't stand for.
Right. Even if it's that as simple as I don't like ice cream.
Yeah, I don't
Right.
like ice
Everyone's like,
cream.
how do you not like ice cream?
You're
And you're
not
like,
gonna get
well,
me to
you know
like
what?
ice
I
cream.
don't.
And I'm lactose intolerant on top of that. So there's that.
You're like, so why don't you try being lactose intolerant and having some ice cream, and then tell me how you feel about ice cream? That's really funny. So was there an exercise that you felt like was that particularly pops out to you, that you feel like, oh, that was really cool, or that you thought was particularly effective?
You know, one of the exercises, and this is something that you introduced, it was, what was it? It was blowing out the candle. And what was
Smelling
the
the
other?
rose and blowing out the candle.
Smelling the rose and blowing out the candle. The reason I thought this was so cool is because, again, um, especially for young boys, being a young boy myself at one point, um,
Oh yeah.
I think that's something that we could easily laugh it off and or just make a joke out of it and not take it seriously because it's, oh, smelling a rose. And then I don't know, it just feels like as a boy you could easily make a thing out of that, so you don't have to, you won't look silly.
Yeah.
But they took it seriously, and they enjoyed it. And you could tell, I even would see when I would look at them every time we did it, and I would look around the room, and you can see them as they're looking around. Maybe the first time it was kind of checking in to see who else is going to do it.
Yeah.
But after a while, it was really looking. It felt like it wasn't just checking in anymore. It was like, oh, we're all doing this together. It was more of a excitement about it. So I felt like that was, it was a simple exercise, but it got them all together, all of us. I would say not just them, all of us on the same page and taking a breath together and being okay with just being there.
And
And not,
breathing,
yeah,
right?
and breathing, doing the stuff that we do all the time, but like sometimes we, forget to do even.
Well, someone once told me that the reason people smoke is that it's a cool way to take deep breaths, right? Like there's something cool if you're having anxiety at a party and you're like, right? You're not going to go to the corner and be like, I'm smelling a rose.
But you might, you might. But no, yeah, that's
But
funny.
just that idea of people doing something to help themselves regulate, right? Like if they're nervous or they're freaking out or like whatever it is that they can like calm themselves down. Yeah. Another question I have that I thought, I don't know, I'm wondering your opinion about this, that I thought was really cool is how easily they were able to answer, like, what does a boy feel? Right? Like, what does a boy feel? What does a boy do? What does a boy like or not like? That there were all of these, even in first grade, like everyone knew, oh, like anger is something that boys feel, men feel. Meanwhile, like girls and women feel it all the time, you know? And how cool it was in the Father's Day group having the men talk about their own relationship to anger and having those little boys like see that. I just thought that was so cool. Like the one guy was like, yeah, I noticed that I got really pissed at an email. He didn't say pissed, but like I really mad at an email and I responded without thinking. And then a year later, instead of responding immediately, I took a moment, I took the night, and then I responded better. And these kids got to like see that. They got to see that their parents are in process, that it's a process the rest of your life, like how you're going to manage emotions and how to deal with people. And I just thought that was so powerful. And I'm wondering what you thought about that.
Yeah, the Father's Day was really cool because they opened up in ways that their fathers had never seen before, and it was probably something that they needed as well. Like I don't know, I'm not in the home, so I don't know exactly what happens in that relationship. I got to hear a lot of it, but just in terms of the boys saying things like how much they enjoy being around their fathers or sharing different feelings that they have when they are sad or reasons as to why they get happy or angry or like it was just cool to see that happen. But also, I just wanted to say I was just in this is kind of a side note, but
That's fine. Yeah, go.
I was at a school performing at a school the other day, and as we're sitting in the principal's office waiting to go to the classroom, I was looking at a plaque, and the plaque said, "Children imitate what they see. Give them something good to imitate."
Oh, I love that.
And for me, that was powerful, not only as an educator, but as a parent as well. And really thinking about like they see everything. We try to, we always, especially as parents, we say, "Oh well, no, I don't do that around them." Well, of course you do. It's probably done in a different way, but they see everything, right? So just because you go in the room and then they hear a loud crash and then you come out like, no, everything's fine. Clearly something happened, right? So going back to what you were saying about that, the father sharing that story about, him getting so upset about this email, um, him realizing, no, my son is aware of this, and I didn't know that he also gets extremely angry and, wants to um, be destructive, I should say.
Yeah, because there was that one father who was like, yeah, I raise my voice and it gets scary.
Yeah,
Right.
and
And
he
that,
knows it, but yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that was really cool. And it was also really, really interesting in terms of like what not to do. I remember there was one kid who was like, oh, I don't feel like you love me or something. And the father was like, that's not true. That's not
Oh
true.
yeah, I do remember that.
Right. And then there was this other thing of like, well, I feel this way. That's not true. You don't feel that way.
Mm.
And like how automatic that dismissal is, right? And I think like even if obviously like I have grand plans with Built Up Boys and want it to go all over the country and want families to get involved, like I really want to change the way people emotionally relate to each other, like to help mental health in a preventative way before it gets really bad. That's why I want to start really young. But like even if parents at a very early age, like toddler stage, stop saying you're okay, like even if that change happened, like if I could get every parent to just not say you're okay when some kid
Oh,
cries or gets hurt, if like parents could just stop saying that, like that's like that would be huge, right? Because that's just one way in which, not in a malicious way, people are just like, oh, your experience isn't real. Like I went
yeah.
to some Passover Seder and some kid had too much horseradish. His whole face turned red.
As
Okay.
your
His
shirt
whole face
probably.
turned red.
Right.
He was coughing, like clearly not okay. And the dad was like, you're fine. You're fine. I was like, fine. I mean, ultimately, he's fine. He
Yeah,
didn't have to go to
yeah,
the emergency room. But like, it's just amazing the way in which parents, I find, can't tolerate their own feelings. And then when they can't tolerate their own feelings, then they can't tolerate other people's feelings and their kids' feelings. And it kind of goes
yeah.
back to what your grandpa said of like, no self. It's like if you can manage yourself and accept yourself and if accept your triggers and like really manage that, then you're going to be much more accepting and able to like be with other people.
That's true. And like, and along those same lines, if you aren't in tune with, if you're afraid of how you feel and sharing how you feel, expressing yourself in a positive way, there's no way that you can teach that to someone else. There's no way that you can get someone else to do it as a parent, an educator, anything, right? If you're not in tune with something, I can't, I could try and I could pretend to do something, but it's not going to be as effective unless I truly know what that feels like or what that is in order to get you there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, how can you teach the thing you don't know how to do?
Right. You can
Right.
pretend, you can fake it. A lot of people do it and they get paid a lot of money to fake it, unfortunately. But
Like I
uh,
see it all the time, right?
but eventually someone will see through that, right? Especially going back to the parent-child relationship. They can see when it's not, kids can really see when it's not real.
Okay, last thing. Any advice, even though I know you're a dad of a girl,
Mm.
but you've worked enough with boys, any advice you have for parents of boys?
One of the main things I would say is, you know, all of the things that we've done in the old way of teaching boys to be strong, be a protector, be a leader, all of those things, be brave. My advice is, by saying all of this, don't make it like this is the only way to do it. And by being brave, that means you can never have fear, or you can never be vulnerable, or you can never be any of this, just because there should be a range for everything, right? Part of being brave is being willing to be vulnerable and being afraid, or being uh or not knowing what to do in certain situations. Yeah, that's my advice, is just changing how we define certain things.